A woman stands at the edge of a crowded bar, her fingers tracing the rim of an untouched glass. Her eyes follow a man across the room, someone who hasn't looked her way once tonight. He leans against the wall with the posture of someone who owns the space without needing to claim it. 3 feet to her left, another man hovers, complimenting her smile, offering to buy her another drink she hasn't asked for, telling her how different she is from every other woman he's met. She nods politely, her attention still fixed on the figure, who couldn't care less that she exists. This scene plays out in 1,000 variations every single night across every city in the world, and it reveals a truth that most men spend their entire lives refusing to accept. The man who tries hardest gets the least. The man who cares most deeply about her approval becomes invisible. Meanwhile, the man who operates by an entirely different set of rules, who seems almost indifferent to the outcome, becomes the only man she can think about when she closes her eyes at night. This isn't a modern phenomenon born from dating apps or social media. This is a pattern etched into human nature itself, a dynamic so old that Niccolo Machiavelli understood it 500 years ago when he wrote about power, strategy, and the mechanics of human desire. You've been told that kindness attracts. You've been sold the narrative that being a good listener, being available, being supportive, and showing genuine interest is a pathway to a woman's heart. You've watched romantic comedies where the nice guy eventually wins after proving his devotion through grand gestures and unwavering loyalty. You've read advice columns telling you to communicate your feelings, to be vulnerable, to show her that you care, and you've applied all of this with the precision of someone following a recipe, only to watch her choose someone else, someone who doesn't follow any of those rules, someone who, by every conventional measure, shouldn't be her choice at all. The confusion you feel in those moments isn't stupidity. It's the gap between what society tells you should work and what actually does. It's the disconnect between the pretty lies we tell ourselves about human nature and the raw, uncomfortable mechanisms that actually govern attraction. Machiavelli spent his life studying power, not because he was cruel, but because he understood that reality doesn't bend to our wishes about how things should be. He looked at what is, not what we want to be. And when you apply his lens to the dynamics between men and women, something shocking becomes clear. The strategies that make a man politically powerful are the same strategies that make him magnetically attractive. She doesn't want safety first. She wants a challenge wrapped in unpredictability with just enough danger to make her pulse quicken. The bad boy isn't attractive because he's mean. He's attractive because he embodies principles that trigger something primal, something that exists beneath the layer of civilization and social conditioning. He operates from a position of abundance while you operate from scarcity. He creates emotional tension while you try to eliminate it. He remains a mystery while you make yourself an open book. He leads while you ask for permission. And most importantly, he understands something that Machiavelli made explicit in The Prince. It is better to be feared than loved if you cannot be both. Now, before you misunderstand, this doesn't mean being cruel or abusive. Fear in this context doesn't mean terror. It means respect born from uncertainty. It means she knows you have options, boundaries, and a life that doesn't revolve around her validation. It means she feels the possibility that you might walk away, that your attention isn't guaranteed, that she has to work to keep it. The moment a woman knows she has you completely, the moment she's certain of your feelings and your availability, something inside her relaxes. And when she relaxes, attraction fades. Not because she's shallow or broken, but because the human brain is wired to value what it has to work for. Watch a child with 2 toys, give her complete access to one and restrict the other. Which one does she want? The restricted one, every single time. This isn't manipulation. This is understanding basic psychology. The bad boy intuitively grasps this. He doesn't make himself completely available. He doesn't text back immediately. He doesn't rearrange his entire schedule to accommodate her whims. He doesn't explain himself or justify his choices. He doesn't seek her approval for his decisions. And paradoxically, this makes her seek his. She starts to wonder what he's doing, who he's with, why he hasn't called. The mental space he occupies grows not through his presence, but through his absence. You, on the other hand, have been taught to do the opposite. You respond immediately because you don't want her to think you're playing games. You make yourself available because you want her to know she's a priority. You explain your decisions because you value transparency. You seek her input because you respect her opinion. And every single one of these behaviors, while noble in intention, systematically destroys attraction. Because you're operating from a framework that assumes women choose partners rationally, that they sit down with a checklist of qualities and select the man who ticks the most boxes. But attraction isn't rational. It never has been. It operates on older, deeper circuits that don't care about your kindness or your potential as a provider. Machiavelli observed that the world rewards those who understand power dynamics, not those who wish the dynamics were different. The prince who waits for the love of his subjects before acting decisively will lose his throne to the prince who acts first and earns respect through strength. The same principle applies here. The man who waits for clear signals, who seeks permission, who tries to build attraction through friendship and emotional connection first, will lose to the man who creates attraction through tension, challenge, and strategic withdrawal. This isn't fair. This isn't how it should be, but this is how it is. And here's where it gets even more uncomfortable. The bad boy isn't acting. He's not following a strategy guide. He genuinely doesn't care as much as you do, and that lack of care is precisely what makes him attractive. His indifference isn't manufactured. It's real. He has other options, other interests, other priorities. You are not the center of his universe. And that mystery, that unavailability, that sense that he's always slightly out of reach, creates the very tension that sparks desire. Meanwhile, you're reading articles at 2 in the morning, trying to decode her last text message, analyzing every word, crafting the perfect response. The energy you're investing is wildly disproportionate to hers, and she can feel it. That imbalance is repulsive at a subconscious level because it signals low value. If you're this invested this early, the logic goes, you must not have better options. And if you don't have better options, you must not be worth choosing. This is the brutal calculus that happens beneath conscious awareness. She doesn't sit there thinking these thoughts explicitly, but her feelings shift accordingly. The excitement fades, the texts become shorter. The excuses for being busy multiply. And eventually, she ghosts you entirely or delivers a line you've heard before. I just don't feel that spark. That spark she's talking about is not some mystical, unpredictable force. It's the presence of tension, uncertainty, and challenge. The bad boy maintains all three effortlessly, while you eliminate them in your eagerness to build connection. Machiavelli will tell you that appearing virtuous is more important than being virtuous. He will tell you that perception shapes reality, that the image you project matters more than your internal intentions. The bad boy understands this instinctively. He projects confidence, outcome independence, and social dominance. You project neediness, approval seeking, and scarcity. And in the game of attraction, perception is everything. The question isn't whether this is right or wrong. The question is whether you want to keep losing while clutching your moral superiority, or whether you're ready to accept the game as it actually exists and learn to play it effectively. Because here's the truth that no one wants to say out loud. Women don't fall for bad boys despite their flaws. They fall for bad boys because of the qualities those flaws signal. The aloofness signals high value. The unpredictability creates excitement. The dominance triggers biological responses that have nothing to do with modern gender politics and everything to do with ancient survival mechanisms. She can't help what she's attracted to any more than you can help being attracted to physical beauty. The difference is, physical beauty is largely genetic. The qualities that create attraction in men can be learned, cultivated, and embodied. You don't have to become cruel, but you do have to become strategically unavailable. You don't have to become selfish, but you do have to prioritize yourself. You don't have to become dishonest, but you do have to become less transparent. The path forward isn't about becoming a worse person. It's about becoming a smarter one. It's about understanding that the rules you've been taught don't match the game being played. And once you see that clearly, Once you truly accept that reality operates on different principles than the ones you were sold, everything changes. The power shifts from her to you. The dynamic flips. And suddenly, you become the one she can't stop thinking about. But first, you have to abandon the comfortable lies and embrace the uncomfortable truths that Machiavelli understood centuries ago. The world belongs to those who see it clearly, not those who see it hopefully. Every culture has its myths about love and attraction, stories designed to make us feel good about ourselves and the choices we make. We tell ourselves that true love is about finding someone who accepts us exactly as we are, that the right person will appreciate our kindness and loyalty, that being ourselves is enough. These are beautiful ideas. They're also completely disconnected from how attraction actually forms in the early stages of courtship. Machiavelli didn't write about what should be. He wrote about what is. And what is, when you strip away the romance and the fantasy, is a brutal competition for reproductive access, governed by status hierarchies, power dynamics, and perceived value. The bad boy wins this competition not because he's better than you, morally or even objectively. He wins because he understands the game at an intuitive level. He knows that attention freely given has no value. He knows that mystery creates desire. He knows that a woman's imagination is more powerful than anything he could actually say or do. So he gives her just enough to spark that imagination, then withdraws, letting her fill in the gaps with fantasy. You, meanwhile, are over there trying to be transparent, consistent, and available, systematically destroying the very mystery that will make you interesting. Think about every movie, every book, every story that's ever captivated you. What made it compelling? The unknown, the unanswered questions, the tension between what is and what might be. The moment everything is revealed, the moment all questions are answered, interest dies. Human beings are wired to chase, to pursue, to solve mysteries. The bad boy keeps himself mysterious. You make yourself obvious. And obviousness, no matter how well-intentioned, is the death of attraction. Machiavelli understood that maintaining power requires maintaining distance. The prince who becomes too familiar to his subjects loses their respect. The man who becomes too familiar to a woman loses her desire. Distance creates space for projection, for fantasy, for imagination. Familiarity eliminates it. So when you rush to share your feelings, when you text her constantly, when you make your interest abundantly clear, you're not building connection. You're killing mystery. You're answering questions she hasn't even asked yet. You're removing the tension that makes her think about you when you're not around. The bad boy never makes this mistake because his attention is genuinely split between multiple interests, multiple options, multiple priorities. He's not playing hard to get. He is hard to get. And that scarcity of access, that sense that his time and attention are valuable resources not freely distributed, makes every moment with him feel significant. You can create the same dynamic deliberately, but it requires completely rewiring how you approach interactions. It requires understanding that less is more, that silence is powerful, that withdrawal creates pursuit. It requires trusting that stepping back will pull her forward rather than pushing her away. This goes against every instinct you have, every piece of advice you've received, every romantic notion you've absorbed from culture. But it works, not because it's manipulative, but because it aligns with how human psychology actually functions. We value what we have to work for. We desire what we can't easily have. We become obsessed with what remains just out of reach. These aren't bugs in human nature, they're features. And the bad boy exploits them without even realizing he's doing it. Machiavelli also understood that power comes from controlling the frame. The frame is the unspoken set of assumptions that govern an interaction. Who has higher status? Who needs whom more? Who sets the terms? In every interaction between you and a woman, there's a battle for the frame happening beneath the surface. When you seek her approval, you've accepted her frame. When you adjust your behavior to match her preferences, you've entered her frame. When you try to win her over through effort and persistence, you've conceded that she's the prize and you're the pursuer. The bad boy never enters her frame. He establishes his own and forces her to operate within it. This doesn't mean being disagreeable for its own sake. It means having a strong sense of who you are, what you want, and what you will and won't tolerate. It means not being willing to compromise your standards or your boundaries to keep her interested. It means being perfectly comfortable with her walking away if she doesn't meet your criteria. This is outcome independence, and it's perhaps the most attractive quality a man can possess. Because when she senses that you'll be fine whether she stays or leaves, her brain interprets that as high value. Only a man with options can afford to be outcome independent. Only a man with abundance can risk losing one woman. The scarcity mindset that drives you to hold on desperately, to try harder, to prove yourself, broadcasts low value at a frequency she can't ignore. The transformation from nice guy to genuinely attractive man isn't about becoming mean. It's about becoming selective. It's about developing real standards and real options, so that outcome independence isn't a performance but a reality. The bad boy already has this. He's not pretending he can walk away. He genuinely can and will if she doesn't bring enough to the table. You need to reach that same place, but it requires building a life so compelling, so full, so aligned with your actual values and goals that no single woman can derail it. When your happiness, your sense of worth, your daily emotional state isn't dependent on her responses, her availability, her validation, you become magnetic, not because you're playing games, but because you've become genuinely high value. Machiavelli wrote that a prince must learn to be feared and loved, but if he cannot be both, fear is safer than love. In the context of attraction, this translates to respect being more important than affection. She needs to respect you before she can desire you. Respect comes from boundaries, standards, and the willingness to enforce them. Affection without respect is friendship. Respect without affection is intrigue. Intrigue creates desire. Friendship kills it. The bad boy commands respect through his unwillingness to compromise his frame, his boundaries, his autonomy. You offer affection without requiring respect first, and wonder why she sees you as a friend or an emotional utility rather than a sexual option. The shift required here is subtle but profound. You have to stop seeking her approval and start evaluating whether she meets your standards. You have to stop trying to be chosen and start choosing. You have to stop hoping she'll see your value and start demonstrating it through your actions, your priorities, your refusal to settle. The bad boy does this naturally because he genuinely doesn't think she's that special. There's a dozen like her, and he knows it. You put her on a pedestal, treat her like she's rare and precious before she's done anything to earn that status. And that misalignment between your perception of her value and reality creates the exact dynamic that repels her. Here's the mechanism. When you treat someone as higher value than they've proven themselves to be, you create an imbalance. They sense the imbalance. Their brain, wired for survival and reproduction, interprets this imbalance as you being lower value. If you think she's amazing and she hasn't done anything yet, you must have low standards. If you have low standards, you must not have options. If you don't have options, you are not desirable. This all happens subconsciously, but the result is visceral. She feels turned off and doesn't know why. Meanwhile, the bad boy treats her like she's ordinary until she proves otherwise. And that flip dynamic makes her want to prove herself to him. The entire courtship becomes about her trying to earn his validation rather than him trying to earn hers. And whoever is trying to earn validation is in the weaker position. Whoever holds the validation is in the position of power. Power is attractive. Weakness is repulsive. This isn't ideology. This isn't sexism. This is biological reality shaped by millions of years of evolution. The male who could be selective, who had enough status and resources to choose among multiple females, was genetically successful. The male who took whatever he could get, who had no standards because he had no options, was less successful. Women evolved to detect these signals and respond accordingly. Your desperate eagerness to please her, to accommodate her, to win her over, broadcasts that second signal. The bad boy's indifference broadcasts the first. You can argue that this is unfair, that modern society should have evolved past these dynamics, that we should choose partners rationally based on compatibility and shared values. You can argue all of that, and you'd be right in terms of what makes for long-term relationship success. But initial attraction doesn't care about long-term compatibility. Initial attraction is about genetic fitness signals, status markers, and perceived reproductive value. It's harsh, mechanical, and utterly indifferent to your feelings about it. The bad boy wins the initial attraction phase. The good guy sometimes wins the long-term relationship phase, after she's had her fill of excitement and is ready to settle for security. But if you can't generate initial attraction, you never get to the relationship phase. You get friend-zoned, or she politely declines, or she goes after a few dates. This is why understanding Machiavelli's principles isn't about becoming immoral. It's about becoming effective. Morality and effectiveness are separate categories. You can be a deeply ethical person and still understand how power works. You can have strong values and still refuse to be walked over. You can be kind and still maintain boundaries. The problem is that you've been taught that kindness means having no boundaries, that being good means being accommodating, that having values means being passive. None of that is true. Strength and virtue can coexist. They must coexist if you want to be both attractive and worth being with long term. The bad boy has strength without virtue. You have virtue without strength. Neither is the complete package, but in the initial stages, strength wins every time because strength is what creates the attraction that opens the door. Once you're through that door, virtue determines whether you stay. But if you never develop the strength to get through the door in the first place, your virtue doesn't matter. It goes unnoticed and unappreciated while she pursues men who make her feel something, even if what they make her feel isn't always good for her. This is the tragedy of the nice guy. You'd be better for her than the bad boy. You know it. She might even know it rationally, but attraction isn't rational, and knowing someone is good for you doesn't make you want them. Machiavelli's genius was recognizing that human nature has consistent patterns that can be understood and leveraged. The patterns governing attraction are no different. Women are attracted to status, confidence, unpredictability, social dominance, outcome independence, and pre-selection. These aren't cultural artifacts. They're cross-cultural constants. The bad boy embodies all of them. Status through his social behavior, confidence through his lack of seeking approval, unpredictability through his emotional unavailability, social dominance through his willingness to challenge and lead, outcome independence through his genuine lack of neediness, pre-selection through the fact that other women already want him. You can develop every single one of these qualities without becoming cruel, dishonest, or abusive, but you can't develop them while clinging to the belief that being nice should be enough. Being nice is table stakes. It's the bare minimum. It's not a selling point. Everyone should be nice, but nice alone is invisible. Nice plus attractive qualities gets attention. Nice plus weakness gets you categorized as safe, harmless, non-threatening, and non-sexual. Women don't fantasize about safe and harmless. They fantasize about dangerous but controlled, powerful but protective, dominant but devoted. The bad boy gives them the first half of each pairing. You need to give them both halves. You need to be the man who can be dangerous but chooses to be protective, who is powerful but uses that power to lead rather than dominate cruelly, who is confident but channels that confidence into building something meaningful. This synthesis is the goal, not abandoning your values, but adding strength to them, not becoming a bad boy, but understanding what makes the bad boy attractive and incorporating those elements into a more complete package. Machiavelli would call this virtue a concept that combines strength, skill, and moral flexibility. It's the ability to adapt your approach to reality rather than demanding reality adapt to your ideals. The prince with virtue does what is necessary to maintain power while appearing virtuous. The man with virtue does what is necessary to create attraction while being genuinely worth being with. The first step is always the same. Stop caring so much about the outcome with any individual woman. Build a life worth living independent of female validation. Develop skills, pursue passions, create financial stability, cultivate interesting hobbies, expand your social circle, improve your physical fitness. Do this not to attract women, but because it makes you a more complete human being. The attraction becomes a side effect rather than the goal. When you're genuinely busy building something meaningful, you don't have time to obsess over text message response times. When you have multiple social options, one woman canceling plans isn't devastating. When you are physically fit and well-dressed, you feel confident in your appearance without needing her to validate it. All of this creates the foundation for outcome independence, which creates the foundation for attraction. From that foundation, you can then apply strategic principles. You can be less available without it being an act. You can maintain mystery because you genuinely have interesting things happening in your life. You can set boundaries because you actually have standards. You can walk away from disrespect because you have other options. The bad boy has all of this naturally through a combination of genetics, early experiences, and social calibration. You can build it deliberately through understanding and effort. The result is the same. She feels attracted, she chases, she invests, she worries about losing you instead of you worrying about losing her. The frame flips, and once the frame flips, everything becomes easier. She texts first, she initiates plans, she seeks your approval, she accommodates your schedule, she tries to impress you. All the things you were doing for her, she now does for you. Not because you manipulated her, but because you became genuinely high value and she recognized it. This is the natural order of courtship when both parties are operating at similar levels of attractiveness. The problem before was the imbalance. You were operating from scarcity and low value while pretending to be high value. She sensed the truth beneath the performance. Now you've become actually high value, and the performance is unnecessary. You simply are what the bad boy appeared to be. Machiavelli understood that appearing strong is as important as being strong, but ultimately, real strength is what endures. Fake it until you make it has limits. Eventually, you have to actually make it. The strategies and tactics can get you in the door, but substance keeps you there. So yes, learn the game, understand the dynamics, apply the principles, but also do the real work of becoming someone worth being with. Develop emotional intelligence. Learn to communicate effectively. Build real confidence through real achievement. Cultivate genuine outcome independence through genuine abundance. Become the man who doesn't need these strategies because he is attractive at a fundamental level. That's the ultimate goal. Not to become a master manipulator, but to become a man so aligned with his purpose, so confident in his value, so abundant in his options, that attraction happens naturally. The bad boy stumbles into this through personality and circumstance. You can build it deliberately through understanding and effort. And once you have it, you'll look back at your former self with a mixture of sympathy and amusement. You'll see the neediness, the approval seeking, the pedestalization for what they were. Symptoms of not understanding how the game works. And you'll be grateful you learned, even though the lessons were harsh and the truth uncomfortable. The woman at the bar is still watching the man who hasn't looked her way. But now you understand why. You understand the mechanism beneath the surface. You understand that her attention isn't random or irrational. It's perfectly logical within the framework of evolutionary psychology and status dynamics. And more importantly, you understand that you can become the man who draws that attention without saying a word, without trying, simply by embodying the qualities that signal genetic fitness and high value. The choice is yours. You can reject this information, cling to comfortable beliefs about how things should work, and continue losing. Or you can accept reality as it is, adapt accordingly, and start winning. Machiavelli would tell you that the prince who refuses to learn the rules of power loses to the prince who masters them. The same applies here. The man who refuses to learn the rules of attraction loses to the man who masters them. The bad boy has mastered them instinctively. Now it's your turn to master them deliberately. This isn't about becoming someone you're not. It's about becoming the fullest, strongest, most authentic version of who you are. It's about adding dimensions that were always possible but never developed. It's about understanding that nice is good but not enough, that kindness matters but only after strength is established, that virtue is admirable but powerless without virtue. Combine them. Be strong and kind. Be confident and humble. Be selective and generous. Be outcome independent and emotionally available. These aren't contradictions, they're integrations. The bad boy has half the equation. You need both halves. And when you have both, when you combine the attractive qualities that generate desire with the substantial qualities that sustain relationships, you'll become genuinely high value, not in the performative way, but in the real way that women can sense and respond to at every level. The journey from where you are to where you need to be isn't quick or easy. It requires honest self-assessment, uncomfortable growth, consistent effort, and patience. It requires letting go of beliefs that feel safe and true but don't match reality. It requires embracing principles that feel harsh and cynical but actually work. It requires becoming comfortable with discomfort, with uncertainty, with the tension of not knowing how things will turn out. But on the other side of that journey is a version of you that doesn't need to read articles about why women prefer bad boys, because you'll be the man that women prefer, period. Not because you're bad, but because you've integrated the attractive qualities that the bad boy has with the substantial qualities that make you worth choosing for the long term. And when you reach that point, when you've done the work and become that man, you have a choice that you don't have now. You'll be able to choose women based on their qualities rather than hoping they choose you based on yours. You'll be able to walk away from red flags, disrespect, and incompatibility because you know your value and you know other options exist. You'll be able to build relationships on mutual respect and genuine attraction rather than your desperate need for validation and her temporary interest. This is freedom, not the freedom to manipulate or use people, but the freedom to choose consciously, to set standards, to build something real with someone who appreciates what you bring, rather than settling for someone who tolerates your presence while wishing you were someone else. Machiavelli's final lesson is perhaps the most important. Fortune favors the bold. The prince who waits for perfect conditions never acts. The prince who acts decisively despite uncertainty shapes his own fortune. You've been waiting for conditions to be perfect, waiting until you're confident enough, successful enough, attractive enough, waiting for a woman who will appreciate you exactly as you are without requiring you to grow or change. That woman doesn't exist, and those perfect conditions never arrive. The bad boy doesn't wait. He acts, he approaches, he leads, he risks rejection and handles it without falling apart. This is the final piece you need, not just understanding the principles, but having the courage to apply them, to approach women you find attractive, to set boundaries and enforce them, to walk away when you're not being treated right, to prioritize yourself without guilt, to become, in every meaningful sense, the kind of man that women pursue rather than the kind of man who pursues women. This is your path forward, not becoming a villain, but becoming a strategist, not abandoning morality, but adding effectiveness to it, not playing games, but understanding the game that's already being played whether you acknowledge it or not. The bad boy wins because he plays the game instinctively. You can win by playing it consciously. And when you do, when you've integrated these lessons and become genuinely high value, you look at the dynamics between men and women with clear eyes. You'll see the patterns, you'll understand the strategies. You'll recognize why certain men consistently succeed while others consistently fail. And you'll no longer be in the second category. You'll be in the first, not through luck or genetics, but through understanding, effort, and the willingness to accept uncomfortable truths about how attraction actually works in the real world. The question isn't whether these principles are fair or whether things should work differently. The question is whether you are ready to accept reality as it is and adapt accordingly, or whether you'll continue insisting reality should conform to your preferences while you watch other men succeed with the women you want. Machiavelli chose reality. The bad boy operates within reality. Now it's your turn to make that choice. Everything changes when you do. If this resonates, if you felt the frustration of doing everything right and getting nothing in return, if you're ready to stop losing and start understanding what actually creates attraction, then this channel is for you. We dig deeper into these dynamics every single week. We break down the strategies, the psychology, the uncomfortable truths that no one else will tell you. We give you practical frameworks for becoming genuinely high value. But more importantly, we build a community of men who are done accepting comfortable lies and ready to face hard truths. Men who understand that growth is painful but necessary. Men who refuse to be invisible anymore. So hit that subscribe button right now. Not tomorrow, not after you think about it, right now. Because every day you delay is another day operating with the wrong map, wondering why you keep getting lost. The algorithm rewards engagement. So like this video, drop a comment below telling me which principle hit hardest for you. Share this with another guy who needs to hear it. Not because I need the numbers, but because this information changes lives when it reaches the right people at the right time. You watching this right now isn't an accident. You're ready for this shift. You're ready to stop being the nice guy who finishes last and start being the man who doesn't finish last because he understands the race he's actually running. Welcome to reality. Welcome to effectiveness. Welcome to becoming genuinely attractive. Let's get to work.